Today, I'm delighted to welcome Shoshanna Blanca. Shoshanna is a long-time explorer of how culture, religion, and gender shape our relationship to our bodies and desire. We've spoken before, but Shoshanna has now launched Jesus Christ Porn Star, a spiritual erotic performance art project that lives mostly on OnlyFans, where she creates Christian porn, blending singing, prayer, worship, vlogging, and explicit imagery to bridge the sensual and the spiritual. Her signature acts and projects, including Church in Bed and the Second Coming, challenge religiously rooted sexual shame and invite people to imagine a relationship with God in which their bodies and sexuality are celebrated as divine rather than condemned as sinful. Thank you so much for spending some time talking about this. I find the whole concept fascinating. So I'm going to dive straight in if that's okay. And I wanted to start with, when did the idea of Jesus Christ Pornstar first arrive for you? And when did you feel it was something more than just an idea and something you could really embed as a focus for your experiences and for your life?
It all came out of a psychedelic trip. It was very interesting. I've been a feminist writer, a sex and relationship writer for a while, and a sex educator. And back in 2021, I had an OnlyFans, an educational OnlyFans, and
Mhm.
I took it down after a few months because a couple people, including a friend of mine who was a Christian, told me like, well, she was the one who told me Jesus wouldn't like it. A few people said things like, "What if, I don't know, you want to go into a career where that's looked down upon or something like that?" And I got got freaked out and took it down, and really spent a while thinking about what Jesus would think. I actually was raised Jewish, but I got into Christianity that same year, 2021, because of a psychedelic trip where Jesus visited me. So I was on a whole journey to try to figure out what I actually thought of religion and whether I even believed that, I do believe Jesus was a real person, but whether I believe in that version of Jesus that would tell me not to have an OnlyFans. And then in another psychedelic trip in 2025, I got the idea to do something to bridge those two worlds and to actually use my body as a divine offering to God or to Jesus. And it I created three OnlyFans pages after that. One of them, unfortunately, I can't use because I already have too many. But it's the first one was called "Coming to God," which I liked about like the body as a portal to the divine, and then one was "Uncovering Eve," which is in conjunction with my latest book, Eve's Blessing, and it's sort of a visual exploration of representation of women in the Bible, where I use body art mainly to present myself as Eve and different Bible characters and just talk about biblical views of the body and sexuality. And then I started the Second Coming. So what's funny is Jesus Christ Porn Star became it first came to me as a moniker for a man that I was dating, and it was I had these visions of him and me playing Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene was a follower of Jesus. Some people say she was his wife or his lover or a prostitute he reformed, but in the Bible, she's really just a follower. And I called myself Mary Magdalene porn star. And as we started talking about in the beginning, he was really up and down about the idea and went oscillated between being interested and shaming me for it. And so then I had another trip where I was told, "Why don't you call yourself Jesus Christ porn star?" And I'm like, "Me, Jesus?" And but I think there's something cute. I think more and more about how if there was another Jesus, I think it would be a woman, because I think Christianity and other religions have such a problem with patriarchy and with not listening to women's voices. So that's how I became Jesus Christ porn star, basically out of a bunch of psychedelic trips. Um, and a lot of exploration of the Bible that led me to believe that if something that listening to your body can never is essentially the same thing as listening to God. Listening to your body can never anger God, can never upset God, because our bodies are the most sacred portals to the divine. If we listen to our minds, we might have some warped ideas. We also might think we're listening to our bodies, but maybe there's ego in there. But like, I just firmly came to believe that I think what's natural, like we evolved to be having sex all the time. Like I almost think porn is the world's first profession, because like in the hunter-gatherer days, people had sex. There's actually evidence that women had sex with multiple men at a time. That's why there's sperm competition. That's why if you read the book Sex at Dawn, they say that's why women moan during sex, is to invite other men in. And so I think I think it almost goes against nature to like tell people that this isn't a profession that they can do. And I also just think the way the way that we define work normally isn't very healthy. I don't think it's healthy. Like, I think some of the prostitutes, the true prostitutes, are the people who work office jobs that they hate, where their boss is always mad at them and they're crunched over a computer and they get home late. Like, I think to receive sexual pleasure on your own terms with the people you choose should not be looked down upon. And this community is getting too large for people to make such big generalizations, like, this is bad for women or this goes against God, because people are doing it in so many different ways. So yeah, so the long answer to your question is it was born from many trips and like a long journey deciding what I believe God or Jesus actually believes about sex.
That's a great answer. It's no, it's interesting, and the reading that I've done is certainly, I've certainly seen it sort of since medieval times, where we've been a lot more restricted and restrained in how we think about intimacy and sex. And absolutely, as you say, that when we were hunter gatherers and more nomadic, and the whole saying, "It takes a village to raise a child," comes from the fact that women had many partners, and it wasn't necessarily known who the actual biological father was, because the whole purpose of being alive hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, was to propagate the human race, was to have more children, and the best chance to have more children is to have more partners. So that it's only been in the last couple of hundred years where we've really, and religion, or our interpretation of religion, has to be at fault for that we don't want to act in a way that we think society, whatever that means, would judge us. And like you were saying, there is still that very patriarchal view of women as either wife or whore or slut, which seems, it's extraordinary. What are we now, 2026? But that's still how many people think. And is that part of why you think you were called to do this, to try and expose that lie, I guess, and to try and explore what life could and should be like?
Yeah, one thing that keeps coming up when people are critical of what I'm doing is saying men don't want to date a woman who does porn. They're, if you have kids, they're going to talk about it at school. You're going to have a hard time finding a partner, etc. Men put women who do porn in a certain category. And I think it's really time women stop worrying so much about whether men will like them and focus on being the ones to choose if you like them. Because I don't think it's fair to put on anyone. You need to not do the one thing that brings you the most joy in life. You need to not be yourself. You need to censor yourself, or else, like, or else men are not going to want to date you or marry you or have kids with you. I think instead we should be telling men who are whorephobic, you really need to be careful with those attitudes, because then there are going to be a lot of women who wouldn't date you. Like, I think that we should turn it around on them. And yeah, so I was piggybacking off the idea of like, you're the wife or the whore. I think it's a lot of people live in shame. And there's this quote by Brene Brown: shame lives in the dark, meaning it's when we hide things that we feel ashamed of them. And part of my goal was to get rid of any shame I had about my body, about my mind, about the thoughts I have. I know that like this is the weirdest project ever, because a lot of it is me talking about like psychedelic trips that I've had, and it's meant to be like, I see it almost like that's why I call it performance art. I see it almost like a weird independent film. It's not supposed to be linear or make a lot of sense. It's supposed to be something you read into and analyze and sort of take an overall impression from. Like, they're intentionally really weird videos. There's one where I'm just hissing like a snake. Like, there's some things that I don't even know why I'm putting them out there. It's just like channeled from above. Like this belongs. It's like an art gallery, and I'm just like, this belongs there, that belongs there. But I think a lot of people miss that lightheartedness, because they have this thought like, oh my God, Pornhub. And that's another part of the idea, is to clean up one of the darkest, dirtiest corners of the internet. But but yeah, I just wish people had more lightheartedness. If you think about it, I'm doing something similar to what people are already doing on TikTok and Instagram. I feel like a lot of people are putting random snippets of their life online and honestly kind of making a fool of themselves. Like,
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah, and absolutely, and there are whole companies out there that will go through and sort of scrub your social media that you had when you were 18, 19, for when you want a job when you're 30. It's a lot of things that, thankfully, it was before my time, but if a lot of things have been posted when I was 18, 19, oh my goodness, you really wouldn't want those to be seen. But it's no different from that, really. It's really interesting that you talked about hissing in one of your videos. So obviously the snake played a fundamental role in the Garden of Eden, in tempting and offer temptation. So yeah, it feels like all these messages just all make sense, really. So one thing I did want to ask. So obviously you had and have a, forgive the word, but traditional career, such a thing as this, as a sort of sex educator, therapist, somebody sort of more formally in that industry. Did did it feel like a brave decision to also do this? I know you keep the two distinct, but I've seen videos where you've named your other name, and obviously people can find anybody these days. Did it take a brave step to include this in your life, or were you unable to resist the need to do this?
well, I am still a therapist, and
Mhm.
that's part of why I have separate, like, I have a separate Twitter account. I don't I do use my real names in some videos, but I don't do it in the other direction. Like, I don't
Oh,
share
yeah, okay. Yeah.
on my usual social media accounts that I'm Jesus Christ porn star.
Hey, you come off
I
fancy
wish
time,
I
actually.
could, though.
Yeah, yeah.
There's the therapy profession is actually, a lot of the laws are very outdated. Like, there's, even a lot of laws about like clients can't be out of state for a session, even if it's all over Zoom. And I feel like there's just a lot of old fashioned ideas. The first agency I joined said you had to set your social media private, which I think is
Oh, God.
ridiculous, because a lot of people have other
You
careers that
promote yourself. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
and I didn't listen, sorry. But yeah, I wish that it could be acceptable to just have, I mean, I don't know if it's illegal, but it's looked down upon to be openly a therapist and a porn star. And I do know there are other therapists who make porn, they go by different names, but I think there's a lot of discrimination. Like, I had one supervisor at a sex therapy clinic say I would need to quote unquote clean up my online presence to work for her. And this is my online presence as Susanna Weiss, where I'm just talking about like sex education and things like that. Um, so
Well, if
yeah,
she came across Jesus Christ Superstar, porn star, she'd have a heart attack, I think. Man.
what?
If she came across you as Shoshanna Blanca, she'd be like, "Oh my goodness," she'd have a heart attack.
Oh my goodness, what?
I'm saying if she was worried about your online presence as Susanna Weiss,
I
if she came
know.
across you as Shoshana, she'd be I don't know how she'd cope.
Yeah, I know. I wish that I could be more open about what I do because I think it would get more eyes on it. And I think I will like work toward that point. But I think I'm still working on like getting more press and like putting more legitimacy behind the work so that I can feel even better about showing it off.
Hmm. Well, in your mind, what distinguishes spiritual erotic performance art, which is what you're doing, from just porn? And I say just as not meant to be as reductive as that, but if people are looking at it and think, oh, well, that's just porn. How do you distinguish between the two? Because they're both sexual in a way, but yeah, how do you distinguish between it, or is there no distinction?
Well, I think it would be fun to like read all porn as spiritual erotic performance art. I came up with the phrase because I felt like I was being unfairly judged for making quote unquote porn without people like my ex would just be like, if a woman makes porn, men aren't going to like that. As if like men wouldn't want to sleep with a porn star. But um
I was going to say I've been lucky enough to interview quite a lot of different porn stars, and I've not talked to one that doesn't have partners queuing up. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a myth, really.
But I think like I got frustrated by being just put in that category of porn without people paying attention to what I'm actually doing. Like I feel like when you think of porn, you think of like, I don't know, a woman on her knees giving a guy a blowjob. You don't necessarily think of a woman in her bed, like with crosses on her face, singing a Christian song. And like, yeah, I just felt like that label was really limiting, and at the same time that's a label that I want to expand, that I want people to understand is broader than a woman on her knees giving a blowjob. Like it that there are so many creative filmmakers like Erika Luss.
Yeah,
I like her stuff, and there or Inka Winter at Foreplay Films. There are a lot of there's a lot of porn that is artistic. There's also a lot of porn that is made ethically, that where the like porn stars know each other and they plan the scene together and they check in and they care about one another. And yeah, so I use the term performance art because I think people take it more seriously and it gets across the message, like I said, that it is
yeah.
very artistic to me. It is something that feels channeled like a work of art, and something that where I pay close attention to visual decisions and artistic decisions. Like there are certain things that I wear that have meaning, certain like ways of moving or using my voice. And there are like little sound bits that I use. Like I like to say, beware the rapture. It does feel almost like a multimedia art project where
Yeah.
I like am using like visual and auditory cues to convey different messages. But I also think like a lot of porn does that, not just me. And I think like porn, the reason so many people have a bad relationship with porn is they don't see it as an art form to analyze and to have fun with and to like um, look at the way they would look at an indie film or a book. They see it as something inherently lower, something debased, and that has to do more with longstanding stigma on sex work than it does with the art form itself.
Yeah, I think because there's a lot in there, and interesting. So I had Inka Winter on a podcast, gosh, last year, and she was fabulous and really interesting. And I talked to somebody this week, a lady called Michelena Rose, and she basically has a camera that films her sex life. She's not part of the big industry. She's not part of the big studio. She basically films her sex life with a partner or partners, whatever. And it's just invited people into her life really. And I think one of the big issues with porn is what I'd call almost the fast-foodification of porn. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people's experience of porn tends to be the clip sites, where it's 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, whatever. And it's very, very sort of, there's always more. So it's fast food. I've had a burger, I have another burger. I've seen a porn clip, I have another porn clip. And when I've talked to porn stars or people in the industry, they're very, very focused on, they see porn that they create as entertainment. And it's not something where people should watch that to understand what intimacy is all about. Yes, a lot of things you see in porn are things that people don't necessarily want to do in day-to-day life. They don't necessarily want to be choked or have anal sex with four people, or not all women are completely hair-free. All there's so many stereotypes that porn creates, whereas the more feminist porn or ethical porn, or it's fascinating. Some of it's beautifully shot with very good budgets, and like I say, the porn stars know each other. They go from sort of film set to film set, and it's much more. What's the right word? It's much more eloquently communicated than I think people's experience of just porn, if you like, which I think is, yeah, it's a shame. So when people come across your content and they sign up for your OnlyFans account, or they watch clips and then or listen to this and want to sort of experience more, whatever, what would you hope people get from spending time with you? Would Are you comfortable that people get aroused or might orgasm watching you, or are you very much about them understanding the message on a sort of mental and cerebral level? What would you want people to feel and experience and explore when they're spending time with you?
I'm more interested in them getting the message than them getting off to my work. It's funny, I go back and forth between having like the actual masturbation videos, the more overtly sexual ones on Pornhub, and taking them off, because I do feel like if they get off to it, they should pay me more. And Pornhub doesn't
Completely.
have a structure to do that.
Yeah.
You It's kind of like YouTube. You make a certain amount of money off the ads, but
Mhm.
like I think in a year I might have made like $100. It's not a lot from there. I think like, yeah, that is a tension that I struggle with, is that as a woman who's naked on camera, I'm going to be objectified. And that's part of the point, is I'm catching the people who search things like big tits or whatever, brunette, whatever they're searching, and then they find something unexpected. And what's so I guess I'm kind of trying to convert people or like take people who kind of have sleazy motives and present them with something else. I also think there are actually a number of people who message me saying like, you've changed how I think about God and things like that. So I know there are some people who actually are listening. I mean, there are psychics like Glacier Rain who have YouTube channels where they give psychic predictions. So in a way, I feel like I'm also appealing to that crowd of people who tune into those kinds of things, because some of my stuff is psychic predictions or channelings, and I just happen to be topless, and that's part of my character. So some people might just be in it more for the psychic predictions. Some people might be in it more for the like celebration of Jesus. I think mainly I want to challenge how people think. And it's almost more for me. It's funny because like I barely even think about how other people will be receiving it. I think it's like it's such a form of artistic expression for me.
Yeah.
Like it's almost worth it for me just to get it out, even if I would be sad if no one watched it, but even if like very few people do, or even if I if very few people actually get the message, it's something that like fulfills my soul, that I just
Mm.
trust that something good is coming of it. And there's going to be like, I picture a movement like a whore's revolution, a movement for Jesus freaks in the bedroom, or for whores who love Jesus. um, I feel like I'm making motions toward that movement. I just don't know exactly how.
Mm. And yeah, a lot of strippers and pole dancers and content creators I talk to are religious. Do talk about Jesus, talk about their spirituality, whatever, and don't see a dichotomy between the two. In your, perhaps this is more about your psychedelic experiences than the work you're doing now, but how is your understanding of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, the Rapture, the apocalypse? How has that evolved? Do you have a sense for where we're heading?
This is the out there part of it. I believe we're going through the rapture right now. I have videos
Okay.
about this. Like, you heard of the term cancel culture, like
Yeah, yeah.
the idea of everyone getting called out. I think that could have been what the Bible was predicting. I think it's happening on the internet, that people are getting called out for all their worst behavior. I think that's something that I have been doing lately, because I've been losing patience with men on dating apps and just posting about the horrible messages I'm getting. So I think in a way that is the rapture, is people that, and also I think the use of psychedelics and cannabis and plant medicine is actually connecting people on a higher level and making us increasingly psychic. And I
Mhm.
think that's also what people mean when they talk about the end times. It's like this, we'll get to live in heaven on earth by putting our minds in the state of heaven through plant medicine, and actually being more connected to one another, because we have increased empathy through use of these medicines. We have just increased understanding of other people. And I think, like, my theory is that we're going to get to a point where we don't need to use our phones or computers to communicate, because we're going to get so telepathic. Um, and my prediction, I predicted this last year, like, it's going to go from about until about 2027, that
Mhm.
like the world is going to be ending and we're going to realize we're in a new world, we're in heaven on earth. Um, that what was I going to say? Yeah, and I think so. The Bible talks about a new heaven, a new
Mhm.
earth, and a new heaven. I think the new heaven is a new internet that's going to be like installed into our minds so we can communicate telepathically. This is my wackiest idea. We'll see what actually happens.
No, actually, I don't think. I remember reading a book called The Celestine Prophecies years and decades and decades ago, and it wasn't dissimilar. It was about it's about, and the book was sort of saying that we, at some point during the last millennia, we lost the ability to vibrate on the right frequencies, and if we can somehow tune our vibrations back into the right frequencies, we'll absolutely be able to communicate with one another, be able to communicate with plants, with animals, with energy, really. And that's what he was saying, is that we were created as energy, and we've sort of locked our minds, bodies into this mortal form, and somehow we've almost discarded that, anything outside of that, which is why I think, and this is going to be a question, but I don't know what it's a question now. So, and I think, but part of the reason why a lot of countries, a lot of states restrict heavily plant-based medicines, restrict psychedelics, restrict those things, because ultimately governments, not to get political, but he says getting political, governments, states, countries, whatever, their ultimate power is if they have control of us. And if we find a way through different elements, through ayahuasca or whatever else, then we're going to find the power for ourselves. Do you think part of it is that there's a very There's a big nervousness about organizations losing control.
Mhm. Yeah, I was just posting about this on Twitter, how I think the biggest conspiracy of our time is we live under the government's laws as if they were divine laws. Like we think that because psychedelics are illegal that they're wrong, things like that. And I think I have wondered before if the government and sex work, all the things I do, and sometimes I do wonder if the government intentionally goes after the things that are most liberating to us so that we don't have too much power. I do think it's interesting that this year Donald Trump started putting all this funding into psychedelics, especially ibogaine, which is actually the medicine I had all these trips on that started
Okay.
this project.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think that's interesting that after I started predicting that like ibogaine was like the medicine of the future, Trump is into it. That like makes me think we are psychically connected.
That's quite,
Like
that's very worrying.
a collective like shift happening that we're all privy to.
Mm. It does feel, and I talk to lots of people that are spiritual or connected and have, yeah, I guess a broader way of thinking. I think there's a lot in just where we are today with developments with AI, with the governments that we have, with a lot of things seem to be, and with people talking about us going to live on Mars and leave this planet altogether. It just feel like we're coming to a not crisis point is the wrong, maybe inflection point is a better way of putting it. It feels like everything's coming together to something, and I guess the big gap we have is, well, what is that something? Is it rapture? Is it ecstasy? Is it the end of time? What is the something that everything's dragging us towards? Really,
I think it's the second coming. I well, I feel it's funny. I have these moments whenever I have a psychedelic trip or sometimes even on cannabis when I start thinking that I'm Mary Magdalene and it like it I tune in and out of this. It's not like I don't think I'm Susanna Weiss, but it's almost like I have this remembrance that I came to earth as Susanna Weiss to be Mary Magdalene, to like play Mary Magdalene in this life. And then it's very strange that my ex Joshua, I kept thinking of that he was here to play Jesus. And I think we'll see what happens with him, but I keep thinking that something's coming up that we're both going to actually step into those roles. That's another weird prediction of mine, but I also think there's a collective awakening among women to the ways in which they came to earth to embody Mary Magdalene or Mother Mary or other spiritual figures. And there's this term Christ consciousness, the idea of men or anybody embodying the spirit of non-judgment and unconditional love and forgiveness. I think there's a collective movement to embody those energies among many people, especially people who have done psychedelics and or some form of spiritual healing who can connect with those energies. And I think what we're going to see is an actual overthrowing of patriarchy or major challenging of patriarchy, that there will be women leading a new spiritual movement, a form of Christianity that does not revolve around worshiping this punishing God who's almost like an angry father. And like we are moving toward a way to worship God and worship Jesus without having that paternalistic. I think we project our fathers because we live under a patriarchy. It's like we project our fathers onto these figures. And
yeah.
I think what the second coming really is the coming of a Christ who is not here to boss you around, tell you what to do, punish you, give you rules, but is actually here to support you in listening to your body and doing what makes you healthy and happy. And like that'll be the new earth when we wake up to that being the real Jesus.
It is interesting if you think for a moment that if we take the Bible as sort of primarily factual, and if you listen to what it's saying, is that God gave His only Son for our sins, and God created us in His image, and you think, well, if that is the case, then why on earth would that same God want us to punish ourselves? And a lot of religion over the years has been part of religion has been flagellation and whipping ourselves, scourging ourselves. Lots of sort of terrible things have been done in the name of religion. It doesn't feel that that's what
Yeah.
what our God, a God, would want it's his her creation to be about, really be about sort of punishing ourselves. Sure, it should be about taking this amazing life that we've been given and looking for the joy in it. Does that make sense?
Yes, I actually write about this in my latest book as Susanna Weiss. It's called Eve's Blessing: Uncovering the Lost Pleasure Behind Female Pain. And I talk about this idea that God cursed Adam and Eve. And he didn't exactly curse them. He did not say, I curse you, Eve. He cursed the serpent and the ground below Adam. And he told Eve, you will give birth in sorrow. Um, I will multiply thy sorrow and thy conception, and sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, or I will make your childbearing pains very severe, depending on the translation. And I talk about how my interpretation is that this was a temporary scenario, that basically what happened was patriarchy. What happened was women actually became they started giving birth in sorrow because of all the shaming of women's sexuality, all the pressure around women's reproduction, the patriarchal medical system that doesn't give them control over how they give birth, that there's all these external factors. And I think that actually that tale is almost a foreshadowing of those. And then Adam's curse is painful toil. He will work until he dies. And to me, that almost sounds like capitalism, needing to work to live,
Mm.
and basically working yourself to death. And my theory is that this was meant to like last until the second coming. That like, well, I think it was meant to last until Jesus died on the cross, because he already died for our sins.
Yeah.
So I believe if people understood what that meant, they wouldn't live under the Edenic curses anymore, because that includes Adam and Eve's sin, original sin, the sin of being born. And he died so that nobody would have to suffer for their sins, including Eve eating the apple. So I think that like if we it almost feels like Jesus's original mission failed. It feels like he came there to say, like, let's stop following all these rules and thinking we need to pay for our sins and just love ourselves, God, and other people. And then people created a new religion on top of that that also teaches paying for your sins, and like punishment and shame. And I think maybe it was needed. Maybe there's a certain like maybe people need to learn lessons until they can't learn any more lessons and just want to get gifts. Um, but I think sometimes I think the God in the Old Testament or even in the whole Bible is a satanic God. Like if you think about the trajectory of events, like cursing Adam and Eve, sending his only son to die, telling a
Yes.
tribe to like cut off part of their baby's penises. Like there's so many like
Yeah.
awful things this God does, that it feels like not that God is Satan, but that almost people interpreted God through a satanic lens.
Mhm.
Maybe one mentor of mine once said, like, apparently a lot of people had mold poisoning during that time. I don't know. That's, I've thought about that because I've dealt with that. And I almost think things like that can like affect our minds in ways that there might be like a bunch of ways in which we're sick as a society, as human beings, that are like making us worship this devilish God that's not really God. And
Mm.
and I think the second coming is when we overthrow that God and we realize that actually God loves us and loves us unconditionally and doesn't need us to change or to prove ourselves or to deny um, our impulses or to repress who we are. Um, and and yeah, I think that listening to women is an important part of that process because I think that women have not been as corrupted by patriarchy because they can tell that it's a bad thing. Um, and so and so we should listen to more women's voices on the topic of religion and spirituality.
We should. We really, really should. Do, do you so one of the aims that you have, one of the ambitions is for this to become bigger, to become a movement or a community, or to be something that people understand and accept and embrace, which is absolutely wonderful, and hopefully that happens. But I guess as this scales up and gets bigger and bigger, it also potentially exposes you to more people that would cite you for being blasphemous or for misunderstanding or for being for doing something. How will you maintain the strength to not let those remarks, comments, negativity impact you?
I learned this a long time ago as a feminist writer, just not to read comments, not to read. Occasionally, people go above and beyond and will reach out to me on social media. And it's funny, Pornhub is the least judgmental place. Most of the messages I get are like, "Hey,
If
want
you're
to
on Pornhub anyway, I guess. Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at Pornhub, then what have you got to say, really? Yeah.
Right, that's kind of what I like about it. The people there are already watching porn, so they can't really be judgmental. But yeah, I think I haven't gotten much negative feedback except from my toxic ex who seemed to just have an agenda to bring me down. And I think oh yeah, and a judgmental friend who said she was worried about my mental state and stability because I had vlogs where I cried and shared vulnerably from my life. And people have trouble understanding that that's not an inherently bad thing. We're just taught it is. And I think I actually do things like that to get rid of that idea. So yeah, I have had the thought that certain people would find it blasphemous, and that's why I'm doing it though. That like where do you draw the line? Because in
Yes.
many US states, it's legal for a woman to walk around the street topless. So why is it an issue to vlog in my bed topless? It's legal
Yeah.
to breastfeed a child in public. Why is using my breasts to express my love for Jesus less holy than that?
Mm.
I'm looking to challenge some of these taboos. And yeah, why is a woman less respectable if she's been naked on the internet? As I said, in our hunter gatherer days, we probably saw people naked all the time. Um, it wasn't it. It's not that nudity isn't special or sacred, but that's on our own terms to use it the way that feels special and sacred to us. And I think I'm part of what I'm doing is resisting the virgin whore dichotomy of a woman can't be a spiritual leader and be naked. And like I said, the a lot of the people, a lot of us are naked on the internet in uncomfortable ways. I think that's almost what I'm doing is a parody of what people are already doing, which is just oversharing from their lives on social media. Um, I always think it's funny the ex of mine who was like very negative and told me my videos were embarrassing and shameful. His TikTok is embarrassing as fuck. It's just like him, just like showing the world how single he is and how insecure he is, how little he has to do with his time.
I mean, there's so much hypocrisy. So I mean, I think Pornhub as one site gets 4 billion hits a month. So people are consuming and watching porn, and they must know that the person they're watching is somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's partner, whatever. So there's a huge amount of hypocrisy when people talk about, oh gosh, that's terrible. They're the people that are literally going home and have got 100 tabs open with the most peculiar porn you can possibly imagine. Are there, in your psychedelic experiences, are there, does it sort of create boundaries for you? Are there things you wouldn't do or wouldn't depict in trying to challenge shame, or do you feel very open about what you're doing?
Well, I sometimes get men. The funny thing is, I get a lot of men wanting to collaborate who just don't get it. Like, I told one dude on a Hinge date was saying he wanted to collaborate. I told him everything needed to have a Christian theme. He's like, okay, how about you draw a cross on your back and I rail you but from behind? I'm like, that is not in the
Right.
spirit of what we're doing. That's just
Not
you.
quite getting the message across, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's this impulse people have to objectify a woman once they see that she's made porn, and that's something I do try to resist. I try to, even though there are videos where I know that I look good and I am trying to look good, I resist certain things, certain conventions. Like, I've done two collaborations. They were both very highbrow, I would say. Like, one was me, it was like a BDSM scene where I spanked my friend for the sins of men. One was I called my friend, I drew crosses on his hands, called him healing hands, and he massaged me while whispering poetry to my pussy. I think part of what I'm trying to resist are these social scripts for sex that say, like, a woman does porn, woohoo, just like it's
Yeah.
just fair game, just fuck her, or have like there's this assumption that I'm here for the male gaze. And so I think that's part of why I haven't done more traditional things like having sex on camera with a partner, because I don't want to be put in that category of like um, that normative idea of that's what sex looks like or that's what porn looks like is like a woman getting fucked. Not that I would never do it. I think it would be, I think the person would need to already be a partner of mine, and I would
Yeah.
need to have like a mission, like showing how, you know, a couple can consciously make love, something like that. um
Mm.
so yeah, I would say, like, I try not to do anything to please the male gaze, even though I kind of play with that trope and kind of joke about, like, yep, my tits are out, so now you gotta look at me because it's true. Like, I am kind of using that form of power as a tool
Yeah.
to get eyes on me.
I mean, it's interesting, obviously on Pornhub, I don't know how many thousands or millions of hours of porn there are there. So there's something for everybody on there anyway. So I think the opportunity you have and you've embraced is to create something that, as far as I'm aware, is unique, and that's the key thing. It's almost maybe creating content where you're being filmed, writing the messages in your body, and creating the art on your body. And I think that's part of it. Is almost the whole story of what you're doing, etc. Which I guess is more you can do on OnlyFans. It's almost create that whole story and the whole journey to what you're doing, and not just be filmed doing an act because people are quick to look at that. And like I said, it's not who you want or what you want people to get from that. And I know we haven't got much time left, so there's just one more question, if that's okay. What what would success and happiness and positivity feel like to you in the coming years? What will help you feel that your mission is progressing, not necessarily being complete, but is on the right track?
Well, I have an idea to literally stage the Rapture on Pornhub, to invite many people on and make Pornhub a healing space by having us all talk about different conflicts we've had with people different people who have hurt them and use it as a place for conflict resolution and to talk things out and to talk about the things we've kept inside, the wounds that we've hidden because they're too painful, and just honor this spirit of being completely naked emotionally as well as physically. And I had this idea to call out everybody who's ever hurt me and give them all the chance to come up and then talk to me about why they did what they did. That is something I feel like I need more supporters to actually pull off. So thank you for being a supporter.
Absolutely. It feels like almost obviously within. I was raised Catholic. I think one of the big Catholic traditions is confession. It almost feels like you're creating a very almost a counter confession, that you're inviting people to share their experiences, positivities, and just expose who they are really. Which I think confession is always very, very limited. It's very about telling a human your sins to then he'll then tell somebody else get past whatever. And also always a man. Whereas
Well,
then what you're doing is inviting people to be open, really. And isn't that what life should be about? Being open. I think you've made a huge step that hopefully people can follow in their own baby steps to get to where you are. But if you can lead the way, all power to you. I think it's fabulous.
yeah, it's interesting how the internet has become a kind of confession booth that's both private
Yeah,
and public because you're in
I
private,
know.
you're at home with your phone or your computer, but it's broadcast to the public.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like at the same time hiding and revealing everything.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for sharing with me. I'd love to talk to you again in the coming weeks because there's so many more questions I've got to ask you. But yeah, it's just fascinating. What you're doing, I think should be applauded. So thank you for being brave enough to do what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.